Hello everyone, this is PK Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and we're going to talk about the DC Studio movie universe and all of the announcements for the new era of projects helmed by James Gunn and Peter Safran, who, just in case anybody didn't know, are both helming the movie and animation division for DC projects going forward. Now, despite this new era, there could be spoilers within the DC cinematic universe as it currently stands, so just beware when going into this overall video. Now, the announcements that were made on Tuesday, the 31st of January 2023, were feverishly anticipated, especially by social media fans who were very desperate in waiting for this news. And it was announced by James Gunn via a video. Strangely enough, the announcements of the projects were being dropped by news outlets literally a couple of minutes before the video was released. But there you go, this is how things works. But despite that, James Gunn announced that this would be the first chapter, the chapter 1, titled Gods and Monsters, and he also established very early on within the video that despite the fact that we would be seeing this new era of characters and iterations, that there was still room for other Elseworld versions to also exist alongside these new interpretations. So we'll get straight into it then with the biggest announcement for me concerning the greatest DC character ever, and that is of course Superman. And James Gunn announced that there will be a new movie titled Superman Legacy, set for release on July the 11th, 2025. Gunn is still in the middle of writing the project, but we do know that he did announce a couple of months ago, after the confirmation that Henry Cavill will no longer be returning to the role of Superman, that his version of Superman will be a much younger version of Clark Kent in his early 20s, still adjusting to life within Metropolis and the Daily Planet. So apart from that, there's not really too much else to go on in terms of this news, but it will be likely the first movie within James Gunn's era. So far, it was the only project that he announced with an actual release date. And I guess it's just good overall that Superman is still a priority for DC. I've said in multiple videos that I felt that he's been largely mishandled by the studio. For some reason, they've struggled on how to get a grip on this character, despite the fact that he's probably the most easiest character to translate into movies. And the struggle that DC have had has been proven by the fact that it will be 12 years since we've last had a Superman standalone movie. Man of Steel came out in 2013, so by the time that Superman Legacy arrives, it will be 12 years exactly. So again, that's more of a positive sign that we will be getting another Superman standalone film, and I just hope and pray that this time it will be a far more justified and more accurate interpretation of what the character should be and stand for. The next announcement, staying on the Superman trajectory, is that Supergirl will also be getting her own movie. The project will be based on a comic book run, Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, which was an 8-issue comic book series created by Tom King, running from August 2021 to April 2022, which was more essentially of an outer space adventure, seeing Kara Danvers alongside her dog Crypto having various space adventures. And again, that's all we have regarding this. I do think it's good that Supergirl is getting her own movie. I just hope they cast an actress, or they go for somebody who has much more of a look of the character, as opposed to the Sasha Calle version that we will be seeing in the upcoming Flash movie. Now, another standout announcement for me was Lanterns, which will be a television series on HBO covering the Green Lanterns, Hal Jordan and John Stewart, in a true detective style dynamic where they and other Lanterns will be discovering a terrifying mystery that has ties to the larger universe. Now, in terms of this news, I'm very mixed on this. Now, on the one hand, a space cop, lethal weapon type of buddy cop dynamic, I think is absolutely perfect for the Lantern Corps, who are essentially an intergalactic police force, so that style and tone absolutely works for the overall project. But it's on a television budget. Now, whilst it will be a very big television budget, something like the Green Lantern, very much of a space encompassing concept, should really be cinematic. And would a television show have enough resources to fully show all of the different constructs of the power rings? How far will they go into showing all of the different coloured lanterns? All of these, of course, encompassing different feelings and emotions, as opposed to the one of willpower showed by the green rings. Will there be too many constraints within the television budget to fully utilise this material? Now, we did see some of this potential used with the CGI 3D animated series of the Green Lantern that was on the Cartoon Network from 2011 to 2013. And will this show be able to expand on the ideas shown from that series to really unlock something special within the Green Lantern character? I'm not really so sure yet, and honestly, I'd still prefer it if this was rather a huge movie. as I think Green Lantern deserves that, especially after the disappointing entry that we saw from 2011 starring Ryan Reynolds. But we'll wait and see overall what happens when they introduce the Lanterns later on down the line. Now, next up, in terms of announcements, of course, we would be getting something Batman related. That's just the way it is with DC. And James Gunn announced that his version of the character will be coming in a project titled The Brave and the Bold. This movie will be based on Grant Morrison's comic book run, of which itself took inspiration a lot from the animated series of the same name that was also screened on Cartoon Network. Now, this film will feature Batman working alongside his son Damian Wayne, who also adopts the Robin identity and was a character created by Grant Morrison. And this will really be the first cinematic expansion into the Bat family. We have, of course, previously seen Robin and Batgirl, but this is the first time that we will be seeing much more of a father-son dynamic within Batman. Now, to be honest with you, I'm not really a fan of Damian Wayne as a character. For me, Dick Grayson is still the best Robin. Damian Wayne, for me, I just don't like the whole rebellious, kind of bratty nature that we've seen interpreted a lot, especially throughout the animated movies. But this will be a different direction for Batman, and it will to an extent provide a fresh narrative of seeing how the Caped Crusader can go on fighting crime, as well as having to look after his adolescent teenage son. Now, people will say straight away, what about Robert Pattinson's Batman? But as mentioned before, James Gunn clearly established at the beginning of the video that other Elseworld versions can exist outside his own vision. So there's still plenty of room for Matt Reeves' version to continue if the box office receipts warrant it. Now, despite all of that, they will still have to be very careful because general audiences may not be able to grasp the whole alternate versions, Elseworld takes, running concurrently alongside one another. So this is just something that they would have to be careful of. Personally, I think it would be much better if they allow Matt Reeves to have one or maybe two more movies, close that version out, and then go forward with this Brave and the Bold version. But we will wait and see what their plans are going forward for having Batman return to the big screen alongside his son, Damian. Now, the next interesting project is Paradise Lost, which will be a television series based on the Amazonian warriors within Themyscira. Of course, this is where Wonder Woman originates from. Now, Gunn hinted at a Game of Thrones style direction for the series, and to be honest, that makes complete sense. You're dealing with a very much of a hardcore type of warriors, taking on all sorts of monsters and beasts. You're dealing with the whole history and mythology, so that type of tone should hopefully provide plenty of scope for a very grandiose and epic fantasy series. Now, will this focus far more on the Amazonians rather than Diana Prince herself, so that she can still participate in live action movies? We will wait and see. Will they have a cinematic Wonder Woman crossing in and out of the series and her own films? That's a possibility, certainly. Is this show a placeholder until they can find a suitable replacement for Gal Gadot, who it looks increasingly unlikely that she will get to have a third Wonder Woman movie? But who knows? But this is a project I think that could be really great if they get the tone right. And whilst it shouldn't require as much CGI as what Lanterns should do, it should still hopefully have a sizable budget and have that cinematic look about it. We then move on to Waller, which will be really interesting for debate. Now, this is a television series based on a secretive rogue government agent, Amanda Waller, running the Cadmus Group. The revelation here is that Viola Davis will be reprising her role that she played with the character from the Suicide Squad movies. And not only that, she'll also be teaming up with members from the Peacemaker series. Now, one of the contentious debates after the denouncing of Henry Cavill in his role as Superman is that any new rebooting of the DC universe must cut ties with all previous Snyderverse characters, including anybody from the Suicide Squad movies and Peacemaker. And of course, this does include a lot of James Gunn's friends and also his wife, Jennifer Holland, who plays Agent Hardcore. People have always asked the question, why would you get rid of Henry Cavill, who certainly has a following in terms of his role as Superman, yet you're keeping other less minor characters and keeping faint ties to the Snyderverse? Now, whilst these characters aren't prominent within the Snyderverse, the connection is still there, and by keeping them involved, you are dangling that carrot for the ongoing Snyder fandom, who continue to gain false hope that someday, in some way, their universe will get a continuation. And overall, I do agree with that sentiment. I do agree that it would have been best just to cut ties with all of the characters completely and just start afresh. But going forward with this series, wouldn't it have been a lot easier to incorporate Amanda Waller within the Peacemaker Season 2? Wouldn't that have been a lot more simpler rather than just adding on another series? which we assume that they will want to go on for multiple seasons alongside Peacemaker, which has already been announced for a season 2, of course. So, despite the fact that Viola Davis is great in the role as Amanda Waller, it will be interesting to see how exactly they juggle forward a Waller series alongside a Peacemaker season 2, and of course that's keeping fake connections within the Snyderverse, and how will they deal with the online discourse or disapproval that comes forward when these shows arrive. We will wait and see within the future. Other projects include a Booster Gold series. The hero was created way back in 1986 and is based on the character from the 25th century, using devices to travel back into the present timeline. Now, this is the character that I've always said is most suited for James Gunn's more comic sensibilities and type of humour. From watching the video, you can clearly see he's invested in portraying this character as a loser, incorporating imposter syndrome as what he stated, and in many ways we've seen James Gunn favour this more type of self-depreciating hero or character from his Super film and also from the Guardians of the Galaxy, and I fully expect Booster Gold to be in the same vein as those projects. We then talk about The Authority, which may also share the same deconstructive and self-depreciating tone. This will be a movie based on a superhero team that was created way back in 1999 under the DC Wildstorm division, and this team goes on to save the world by any means necessary. Now, admittedly, I've never heard of these characters before, so I'm not really sure what they're about, but from briefly looking it up, I do think that James Gunn may be going for a mixture of Watchmen and Guardians of the Galaxy in a far more R-rated tone. I would expect the narrative here to be far more serious rather than more comedic, but we will wait and see how it plays out. But this is again another example of a very much of a oddball, very much obscure type of group of superheroes that we've seen constantly within the last couple of years being released in entertainment. We then talk about a more well-known character, Swamp Thing, originally created in 1971. This project, assumingly, will be a series and overall be the second live-action attempt in recent times. The first one, of course, being a series from the DC Universe streaming platform in 2019 that lasted for 10 seasons and was cancelled literally a couple of days after it was announced. Now, Gunn has hinted that this will be a far more darker, more horror-themed based series. I do think that's the best way to go for something like Swamp Thing. And he did state that this will have far less connections to the overriding universe, but it will still exist in the same world and can connect as and when it seemed fit possible. So again, depending on how they treat this character, Swamp Thing could be something worth investing in, but again, we will wait and see when we hear more or see more footage when it arrives. We then talk about the project that he first announced on the video, and that is the creature Commandos. This will be an animated series for HBO Max, and the show is already in production. The characters were first launched way back in 1980, and much like The Authority, it features a really oddball, very obscure, and much more darker looking host of characters. Now, the one interesting thing that James Gunn said here is that there's potential for these characters not only to exist in animated form, but also to translate over to live action movies where the voice actors who will be playing the animated characters can also go on to portray them in live action as well. Now, whether that will actually come to pass, we will wait and see overall. It will really depend on how well the animated show is received. Hopefully they will want to have the same success with more adult orientated animated shows in the last couple of years than what we've seen with the likes of Invincible and Arcane. Again, I haven't really heard of these characters, I don't really know a lot about them, but this is really, I think, the more consistent theme that we've seen with James Gunn when we look at this and the likes of Booster Gold and also The Authority. This is where I think he's most suited, taking these lesser known characters, very much like the Guardians of the Galaxy, and trying to infuse his own tone and style of storytelling. I think that's where he's more better served rather than taking on the more mainstream characters of the likes of Superman, Batman and Wonder Woman. So when I look at this lineup overall, I'd say there are some things that are interesting. It's the Lanterns that I'm very curious to see how exactly he will take on the whole concept and the space ideas and the universe and also the constructs on a television budget. Again, I'm very happy that we will be seeing finally a standalone Superman film. 12 years is too long for the comic book's greatest ever character. There's still some questions regarding Wonder Woman, but again, I think they're just giving themselves some time. Gal Gadot is still very recent in the memory of Wonder Woman, so I think they feel that they've still got a bit of patience with the fans. They don't have to press that button yet in terms of announcing a new version. To be honest, I'm not really interested in The Authority or the Commandos or indeed Booster Gold. Those are not characters that really interest me in any way, shape or form. But again, who knows? That may be where James Gunn is better served rather than the mainstream characters, as I mentioned before. But for now, I do think it was a satisfactory amount of projects to be announced at James Gunn, who we do have to remember has only taken on the job since November. From looking at people on social media, there were lots of fans I think were getting their expectations way too out of whack, thinking that this was going to be a huge phase of movies announced, that what we see especially with the Marvel films, it was never going to be that way. These movies take a long time to prepare and invest in. James Gunn, whilst he's early in writing, hasn't even casted any of the actors yet, or really got a grips of what direction he's taken the universe, whether it will have an overarching story like what we saw from the MCU phases 1 to 3, or whether they will have a standalone nature. We don't know yet, so we can't really make absolute judgments, but I think this was a satisfactory announcement to at least get the DC enthusiasts talking for now. So there's my overall thoughts and feelings on the recent slate of announcements by James Gunn, heralding in his new era of DC animation and films. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Which projects excited you the most about this? Which ones would you like to have much more expanded debate and discussion on? Which projects didn't excite you at all and leave you far more concerned? Can James Gunn finally get it right in terms of Superman on the big screen? Can he finally get it right in terms of Batman on the big screen? We'll wait and see overall what happens, but I'm sure we'll have further headlines and announcements following on from this recent display in an upcoming future. So also let me know if you have any other suggestions in the comments regarding any other television shows or series or any other issues within the entertainment industry that you'd like to see me cover. Drop me a suggestion and I will see if I can provide further commentary for you on those topics within the future. Please also hit and like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves and I will see you very, very soon.